Okay, so I'll go ahead and start by introducing myself. So I am Jessica Suniga. I am the admissions advisor for the Pharm.D program. I do see a lot of familiar names, so I've met with some of you before. Welcome back. Today, we are going to be doing a financial aid presentation. So Mr. Scott Parker, our financial aid advisor, will be sharing some very helpful information with you all. We will then be having a current UHCOP student who is a year 2 student. So she has completed the financial aid process 2 years already. And then she continues to get help as well from our department. So she'll be sharing some helpful tips and like how her experience was during her P1 year and what she did before she even started pharmacy school. So she'll be joining us later. Is my screen up?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. So once again, welcome everyone. I'll go ahead and open up the floor for Mr. Scott Parker.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jessica. I appreciate you inviting me today, and welcome to those that have joined us. Um, I am the financial aid advisor for the Pharm.D students, as well as the optometry students. So I feel like I definitely work with the best students on campus and really enjoy my job, really enjoy working with the doctoral students. I'm a native Houstonian and graduated from the University of Houston with a business degree. So I really enjoy working for my alma mater as well. That's a special treat. Um, and so today I wanted to really share some information that I think will be helpful as far as preparing to enter the pharmacy profession, and some of the things you can do to prepare for the changes that you'll experience in financial aid, the cost of tuition. Um, and so I think this information will be beneficial to you. And certainly I'll answer questions that you may have. Next screen, please. All right, so I'll start with explaining some of the differences between your eligibility as an undergraduate student and your eligibility as a professional student. And it really starts with the FAFSA application. So currently, as an undergraduate student, you complete the FAFSA each year, and most students are considered a dependent student for financial aid purposes. So that typically means you're single and not married, under the age of 24, not a veteran of the armed forces, don't provide the financial support for a minor. So, a vast majority of undergraduate students are dependent for financial aid purposes, and parent information is required for the FAFSA. So if you then scan to the right on this page, you see the graduate equivalent, or the difference rather. For graduate students, they're automatically independent students for financial aid purposes. So the FAFSA is completed as a graduate professional student and no parent information is required. So that's a major difference. And, you'll, instead of just renewing the FAFSA, as some students do from year to year as an undergraduate student, you would make the change of indicating that you're a graduate professional student. And again, no parent information is needed. So that makes the FAFSA much quicker and easier to complete each year. And then secondly, as an undergraduate student, there's much more grant eligibility, both on the federal level with the federal Pell Grant, the federal SEOG grant, there are state grants, as well as institutional grants available for qualifying students. But for graduate students, there is no federal Pell Grant eligibility, no Texas grant eligibility. And each year there is a pool of dollars set aside called the Graduate Institutional Grant. And these are state funds. And it's a need-based and merit-based grant. So it's important for the FAFSA to be on file. And I provide data to the Pharmacy Scholarship Committee for those students that qualify based on financial need. And this grant is restricted to Texas residents. So I provide the data again for students that qualify, and the committee makes selections based on merit. So it's important to really position yourself for this grant as far as a high GPA. And the committee, for this current academic year, the committee did set aside some funding for the current P1 students. In prior years, the committee wanted to see students establish a Pharm.D GPA before any awarding could occur. So that was typically in years 2 through 4. But for this current academic year of 22-23, more funding was available than in the past. And so the committee wanted to spread the funds around more. And with the inflationary pressures we've seen over the past year or so, we think that this additional funding definitely helps students handle higher rent, higher gas costs, higher food costs, utilities as well. So I'm hopeful that this grant will continue at the current level that we're in, and I think that will be very beneficial to students. The third bullet point is concerning student loans. So through the FAFSA, students have access to the direct loan offered by the Department of Education. And if you're a junior or senior, the maximum is $7,500 for the direct loan. And that includes both subsidized and unsubsidized loans for most students that have financial need. But if you look at the third bullet point on the right side, as a graduate student, it is far higher eligibility of $33,000 for fall and spring combined, but it is only the unsubsidized loan. So the unsubsidized loan has interest accumulating typically pre-COVID. Since about June of 2020, there's been no interest accumulating on student loans, no repayment also for those that are graduated due to COVID. And that pause on repayment and interest accumulation is currently scheduled to end at the end of June. So the students starting in fall of 2023, that loan, that direct unsubsidized loan, may begin to accrue interest upon disbursement of the loan. So typically the direct loan will disperse about a week prior to the start of the semester. There's been a fairly recent change where financial aid for Pharm.D students, optometry and law students, along with medical students, disperses about a week earlier than in the past. So again, much larger loan eligibility for fall and spring. Each academic year, Pharm.D students have access to $33,000. And then I'll speak a bit in the future, in the near future, about summer eligibility. So there is eligibility for the direct loan in summer as well. For additional funding, as an undergraduate student, that would often come from the, excuse me, the Parent Plus loan when additional funding is needed. So undergraduate students, sometimes the parents will apply for a private student loan as opposed to the Parent Plus loan, but the Parent Plus loan is a prominent loan for additional funding. On the graduate student side, there is the Graduate Plus loan. So many of my Pharm.D students and optometry students do use the Graduate Plus loan, but there are other private lenders such as Sallie Mae, Discover, College Avenue, and the College Access loan. Those are examples of other private student loans. So I encourage my Pharm.D and optometry students to research those lenders. They're credit-based, and the objective is to get the lowest interest rate possible. So for additional funding, those are the types of lenders that are typically used. And then with regard to scholarships, there are big differences as well. Scholarships on the undergraduate side are more widely available, both from your department and sources such as the ICON Scholarship Universe, which is in student accounts. But on the graduate side, it's a bit more restricted, I would say. There's fewer graduate students, as a percentage of students. And each year, Pharm.D students have their own exclusive scholarships, exclusive to the College of Pharmacy. And so as an incoming student, you'll have an opportunity to be awarded the Dean's Excellence Scholarship, and that's a $5,000 per year scholarship. And about 6 students are awarded out of the entering class. And so that's a particularly valuable scholarship. After the 4 years, it would have paid for nearly 1 year of tuition. So that's significant. And I'll speak more about scholarships on this screen, but Jessica, if we could go back, I think 1 screen, maybe 2. Okay, that's where I started, and just advance 1. So this is additional information about the federal direct loan once you enter pharmacy school. So the Department of Education is the lender, and that's the same situation on the undergraduate level. But as I mentioned on the previous screen, the Pharm.D loan eligibility is $33,000 per academic year for fall and spring combined. And then that increases to $37,167 when you attend summer curriculum. And that's a major change from undergraduate as well. Usually on the undergraduate level, if you've used your fall and spring loan eligibility, there is no additional summer eligibility. But for Pharm.D students, there is an additional summer direct loan that's awarded in the month of May. But for your planning, you want to really work out a good budget for the $33,000 for fall and spring. The amount you accept, like on the undergraduate level, is divided evenly between the fall and spring semester. So you really want to take into account your sources of funding, assistance from parents, and also any savings that you have, so that you try to minimize the amount of direct loan that you're borrowing. The stated interest rate for the direct loan for Pharm.D students for this academic year of 22-23 is 6.54%. And as I mentioned, there has been an interest pause since June of 2020, but that is scheduled to expire at the end of June of this year. And that interest rate changes each academic year. It's based on the 10-year Treasury note. It is capped at 8.25, and the 6.54% rate is probably the highest since I've been working with Pharm.D students. And that's been about 13 or 14 years. So it is a high interest rate currently. And the new rate will be announced typically in the month of June. And what I've experienced is many times undergraduate students, before they join the Pharm.D program, they have either assistance from parents, they qualify for a large number of grants, or they have like the Academic Excellence Scholarship, sometimes Tier 1 scholarship, and even outside scholarships. So many of my students, even on the optometry group, have never borrowed direct loans as an undergraduate student. So it's new to them. And if you enter Pharm.D school having never borrowed a direct loan as an undergraduate student, you would complete loan entrance counseling and the master promissory note at studentaid.gov, and that's the website where students apply to the FAFSA application. So that's a one-time step for those of you who are new to the direct loan borrowing. You'll complete those steps. As I mentioned, Pharm.D financial aid disperses to student accounts about 1 week prior to the start of each semester, right around the payment deadline for each semester. And then while you're in school, there is no required repayment of the direct loan. There is a 6-month grace period after graduation, and then students go into loan repayment after that grace period. And the standard repayment is 10 years, but certainly you can pay off student loan debt sooner than that, and that's highly encouraged in order to save interest on or interest expense. Next slide, please, Jessica. So scholarships are important for Pharm.D students. And as I mentioned, the Dean's Excellence Scholarship is the current incoming scholarship for Texas residents that show financial need, and it's $5,000 per year, renewable for 4 years. Also, a very prominent scholarship is the Stanley Rhinehouse Family Foundation Scholarship, and one student out of the entering class is selected for that scholarship. It's currently $2,000 per year and also renewable for 4 years. So that's also a significant scholarship. And then thirdly, there's an annual College of Pharmacy scholarship application, and that's typically released in the month of April. And so I notify each class when that application is available, and students are able to then apply for essentially dozens of scholarships that are available through that process. So the new entering class for the fall of 23 will apply during spring of 24 for that annual scholarship application. And then current students each year, there are various scholarships that I make the classes available, or let the class know that other scholarships, like from pharmacy organizations and other vendors, and the scholarship committee and other faculty often alert me to available scholarships. So I send those notices to the class listserv for each class, and there will be ongoing scholarship opportunities. And then I've listed on the last bullet point here the scholarship page at the UH website. And then you likely have noticed the Scholarship Universe icon in your My UH account. And that icon is one where you are able to answer questions and then be directed to certain available scholarships. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to that opportunity, both as an undergraduate student currently, and then as a Pharm.D student moving forward. Next screen. This screen shows the current tuition for a P1 student. So for the fall of 2022, there is 15 credit hours, and that's a bit more than the average undergraduate student takes. So that's one difference. And as you can see, the cost, $10,366, and that's roughly double the undergraduate cost of most programs for 12 hours. So you see where the professional tuition costs are definitely higher, and I've shown the non-resident tuition as well. For the spring semester, it is 17 credit hours and the corresponding cost. And then another major difference is that on the undergraduate level, students take summer courses as they choose to. It's optional. But in the Pharm.D program, summer curriculum is required. So for the first year, that's 6 credit hours and the corresponding costs. And again, as I mentioned before, there is a separate summer direct loan awarded in the month of May. And these are the rates for the current 22-23 academic year. For the second summer in year two, students typically take 8 credit hours with electives. And then in the third year, the third summer of the third year, it's actually increases to 12 credit hours and the corresponding cost. So non-resident students can apply for Texas residency after you've lived in Texas for a calendar year. But I'm guessing most of our students that are visiting with us today are likely already Texas residents, but you would visit with the Office of the Registrar if you did need to apply for in-state residency. All right, next slide. And this final slide shows the cost of attendance budget for Pharm.D students for this current academic year. So the budget is made up of 5 different components: tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, and miscellaneous. And these budget components are part of the undergraduate cost of attendance budget as well. But the Pharm.D budget is higher due to the higher tuition, higher books and supplies. So this is just an example of the current budget. And you can see where the $33,000 direct loan fits within the budget, and that leaves some additional room for scholarships or other aid as needed. So these are some of the screens I wanted to share regarding mainly some of the differences between your eligibility as an undergraduate student compared to your eligibility as a graduate student. And also, we touched on scholarships. So I really think that scholarships are important. I encourage you to be in the habit of seeking out scholarships from your department currently. And then once you're a Pharm.D student, of course, you'll be evaluated for that Dean's Excellence Scholarship. As an incoming student, there's no separate application. So you'll apply, you'll have eligibility for that. And then as a Pharm.D student, I also see certain students with private scholarships. So I encourage students to do like a Google search on private pharmacy scholarships. And that should lead to additional scholarship opportunities on the private side, as well as the pharmacy departmental scholarships, and then any opportunities you may see through Scholarship Universe. Jessica, do the students have access to the budget spreadsheet?
They do. So it's actually on our website, and I'll go ahead and drop the link. So you can access it through there, and then I can also share my screen now if you want to talk a little bit about that spreadsheet.
Yes.
Just give me a quick second.
Yeah. And so Jessica is showing an example of a budgeting spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet was actually developed by an optometry student a few years ago. And what I've done is I thought it was a really effective spreadsheet for budgeting. And it originally had many of their optometry clubs and different indicators that it was a optometry related document. So I tried to scrub that as far as references to optometry, and I think it's an effective tool for students to use. There are many different budgeting softwares that students or anyone can have access to. Some of you may know Excel really well and develop your own budgeting spreadsheet. But I like to offer this as a starting point for students who haven't perhaps budgeted previously. So I think it's really important for my Pharm.D students as well as optometry students and even undergraduate students to get into the habit of working out a good budget and really taking a closer look at your monthly expenses as they currently stand, um, and looking at ways to perhaps reduce those in order to, again, the main goal there is to minimize your reliance on the direct loan. And I think by working through a good budget, accounting for any savings that you have, your part-time employment if you're currently working, um, assistance from parents. So that's assistance from parents is very important. That often does occur on the undergraduate level, but many times we see where in Pharm.D, the parent is perhaps busy with another child's education on the undergraduate level or not able to financially support the student in their graduate career. So I think it's more important than ever to maximize their assistance if possible, but then again, uh, really get into the habit of working through a good budget, trying to, again, minimize that direct loan each year to the extent possible. So I think a budget is a fantastic way to really stay disciplined financially. And so I wanted to share this example that you can certainly use. And again, there are many other budgeting softwares, programs that you can have access to or will have access to. But I think this is helpful, and I encourage you to take a look at it and use that. We talked a bit about student loans, and so primarily um, Pharm.D students utilize student loans. And so, there is access to the graduate institutional grant as well as scholarships. And our best students do graduate having received typically 5 figures over the 4-year period, 10,000 or more often in grants and scholarships. But the reality is student loans are needed. But I think by working through this budget and accounting for all of your savings, you can minimize that amount that you end up borrowing. So I think that's the majority of the information that I have. Jessica, um, perhaps our current pharmacy student is available to visit with us.
Yes, so she's here, but thank you so much, Mr. Parker. That was very helpful information. I do see some questions have been dropped in the Q&A chat box. We'll
Mhm.
go ahead and address them at the end when we open up the floor for questions. But thank you again for sharing that. I think a couple of important takeaways is that even though you might not be getting those grants, the federal and Texas grants that you might get in undergraduate years, it's still important to fill out your FAFSA application. So don't forget that. And then another thing, I know in the past I've gotten questions whether you have to wait for us to offer an admission decision before you start your FAFSA application, and that's not the case. You can select multiple schools when you are applying. So just make sure that when you start your Pharm.D application and FAFSA is open as well, fill it out and include UH on there as well for us to access that information. And for our next guest speaker, Ms. Damilola, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay,
Let me
awesome.
see.
Hi. How are you doing today?
If this works.
Yes, we see you.
Sorry, this is
Okay.
my background because we had a project due.
Yeah, no worry. Thank you again for being able to join us today. I know you have a very busy schedule. So first, if you could just introduce yourself and tell the group a little bit about you.
All right. Hey, sorry, I'm currently in the what we call the pharmacy 2 or the P2 room. Hi guys, my name is Damilola Dada. I go by Lola. I'm currently a P2 here at UH. So I'm just gonna talk to you guys kind of about like how my financial journey has been. I know for a fact before I got my admission decision, because I was one of like, I think the very last round, like the latest round, that's when I actually was able to go ahead and do mine. I think it opened up on October 1st for us. And I know like that exact day is when I went ahead and submit because, they do run out of money. So the longer you wait, it's more likely that you'll get a smaller amount of money. So I have it set in my calendar like October 1st, go ahead and apply. Also, I did get one of I believe it's called the Dean's Excellence scholarships. So whatever price that you see in, I guess once you get your admissions and you log into your like your UH access, it's going to be split between 2 semesters. That's what it was for me. Um, so I so I was basically getting more than what I thought. So let's say I think it was maybe like 3,000 or 2,500. So I'm like, oh, okay, yay! Like I got 2,500. I was really excited, but that's 2,500 for the fall and 2,500 for the spring. So it's actually 5,000 instead of 2,500. So just make sure to look out for that. As far as scholarships, I applied for a lot of scholarships. I feel like if you really want to like minimize your loans and stuff like that, external scholarships are a great and amazing way to go. I don't recommend the scholarships that are where it's like, okay, you can win $20,000 and you don't even have to submit an essay. Just, your name and your email, things like that. I want you to really try to find ones that are like personalized. So it's like, okay, well, if this is your major and you're fresh out of high school, like, make sure they're really, really specific. I also like to go for the scholarship that want you to write an essay or they want a letter of recommendation because those are the things that show them like, okay, I stand out. This is how I stand out. This is what I did. This is a person that can vouch for me. I feel like those are your best odds to get scholarships. And you don't always have to apply for the 3,000, 4,000. You can do like a $500 scholarship because at the end of the day, it's going to add up regardless. So that's kind of how my financial things are going here at the UHCOP. Um, Anytime I did have an issue, I would just, you could email Dr. Parker or you can email Mr. Morgan Eli. And like, if not that day, then the next business day, they always get back to you. So if you feel like there's any like discrepancy or anything that's wrong with it, don't worry about it because they will like help you out. You can go into their office or just send them an email and they're pretty good about getting back to you pretty soon.
Yeah, so I think that's a good thing about having like a smaller department and then having Mr. Parker working directly with just two population of students. They're very accessible. So Damilola, I know you got some scholarships. Did you have the need to take out loans or not?
So I did still take out loans. I believe I did unsubsidized, subsidized, whichever one doesn't have the accumulated interest on it. I did take out a little bit of loans for that. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. Like pharmacy, it costs a lot of money. Especially working under a pharmacist. What he told me was, don't worry about loans because when you get out of school, 2 years, if that, you can pay it back because you're going to be making a lot. Like you're investing into this program and you're going to invest into yourself. You're going to make the money back and you're going to be able to pay it back. So if loans are kind of like, if it feels like a weight on your shoulders or like a heavy cloud, that's not something I would be too like pessimistic about because once you get your pharmacy or your pharmacy degree, you'll be able to pay that back pretty easily.
Yeah, I know that sometimes in conversations with other students, I'm like, aren't you freaked out about like all the loans? But then also talking to like students that have already graduated, they're not stressed at all because you are getting that money in return, like what you put in, like you're getting paid well whenever you graduate. So you're able to make those payments back. But so it's also, I think, important to budget and not take out more than what you need, especially like if you have the opportunity to apply for those scholarships. find those resources. I know some of the questions are like where. So like you were saying, Lola, where you did like external scholarships, did you just Google them and like you were just applying to the ones that you thought were a good fit for you?
So with the basically yes, but what there's this really cool once you get your little login, there's actually like a little I don't know what it's called, but there's a tab where they have like so like UH, there's like a scholarship finder. So that's the only thing I did. Like I went to that and you can hit filter. So I filtered it to stuff like I know like, oh, okay, I meet this qualification, I meet this qualification. And that actually pulled up like a long list of scholarships for me. And I just went down the list and started applying. So it wasn't like a Google search or anything. I actually used like the
The
UH
UH. Oh, so the
scholarship finder.
scholarship universe. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so
Mhm.
that's good to know. Let's see. So do you have any tips for our students of like what you did before you started pharmacy school besides applying for FAFSA early and then applying for those scholarships as well?
Um, I also do work. A lot of people in upcoming year P1 year they say, hey, focus on school, this and that. But if you just want, a little savings, a little money for yourself, if you don't want to ask your parents, if you're not able to ask your parents for any reason, I've always had a job, so I knew I was coming to pharmacy school, and I knew it would be a lot. Um, so yeah, I got a job, and I'm really, really good at saving. So I built up my savings as soon as I got my admissions, or even maybe a couple months before. I was building and building and building because if you don't want to work your first year, you need to have some type of money or some type of plan like saved up. So I just made sure I got a lot of hours at work and then I put it into a savings account really called UHCOP savings so that when I, get here, I can just be pulling from that and I don't have to work or I don't have to worry about the stress of just trying to focus on school. And all I do is focus on school since I already had that money saved up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Lola. I feel like those were really good tips. And then I even learned some and because I think it's always helpful to hear from like different students and their experiences. So thank
Mhm.
you for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and open up the
Thank
floor
you, Lola.
to questions now. Um, so for the students, you can either raise your hand and then unmute yourself, or also the Q&A chat box. You can drop your questions there. I see we have a couple already. So let's see. For our first question, Mr. Parker, so how do we apply for the graduate institutional grant for Texas residents?
Okay, good question. Basically, all you need to do is submit the FAFSA promptly or as soon after October 1st of each year. There's no separate application for this graduate institutional grant. So what I do is about in June of each year, I'll send out an email to each class saying, if you haven't submitted the FAFSA, please do so. I will be gathering data for the graduate institutional grant. The FAFSA needs to be on file. So there's certain students that don't submit it until that prompting email. But after that, I run a query that identifies the students that meet the financial need component, and I eliminate the non-Texas residents, and then I provide that information to the scholarship committee, and they make selections based on merit. So there's no separate application. Just submit the FAFSA each year.
Okay, awesome. And then for our next question, where can we apply for these scholarships if we're incoming P1s? So I think Lola touched a little bit on that where she used the scholarship universe, which you'll have access to after you receive an admissions. You'll have that UH ID number. Any other resources that you have, Mr. Parker?
Well, for those that may not be starting Pharm.D until like fall of 24, I would encourage you to continue to seek out departmental scholarships through your current department. And then, as Lola mentioned, whether it be Scholarship Universe or sometimes your employer. Some of our students work at pharmacies such as HEB, Walgreens, CVS, and those companies often offer scholarships as well. So you just want to really be aggressive with your scholarship search for both private and departmental scholarships.
Okay, awesome. And then before I move on to our next question, I dropped a link in the chat. It's very helpful if you could just fill out that short survey. It takes about a minute. It just has a couple of questions about today's session. It's really helpful for us to know like how we're doing and what other resources we can use to assist you. So just take a couple of moments to fill that out. And then there's a QR code as well if you want to use that, but the link is in the chat. And then I'll move on. So for our next question, Mr. Parker, when will we have access to our tuition or FAFSA for 2023?
Well, the fee bill is actually created once you enroll, so that'll be some time away, of course. I did provide the current tuition for the current academic year. The direct loan for the upcoming fall should be awarded typically in about April or May. That's the time period when Pharm.D students are awarded. So it's usually April or May. And on the undergraduate level, you'll likely be awarded a little bit before then.
Okay, and then a question for Lola. Do you work full-time or part? Oh, did you answer it? Yeah, you did. So say it out loud so you can share with the rest of the group. But do you work full-time or part-time? How have your hours changed as you began pharmacy school?
So I currently do work part-time. I do believe it would be extremely hard to work full-time in pharmacy school because your priority should always be school. But my P1 year, I only worked 1 day a week. I worked on Saturdays, and now I work 2 to 3 days a week. So once you get adjusted and you get in the hang of things and you get your flow, you'll be able to take on more hours and still prioritize your schoolwork.
Thank you, Lola. Let's see, one more question. Do we have to submit a separate application for Dean's Scholarship or Stanley? So I think we touched base on that one. I think it was one of the first questions. Oh, no, it wasn't. So Mr. Parker.
Yeah, for the Dean's Excellent Scholarship, there's no separate application. So it's similar to the process of being accepted as a student. Your transcripts will be evaluated, PCAT scores. I think the PCAT test is still taken, right?
Yes, so for fall of 2024, after that, it will be retired. So we would no longer be looking at those scores.
Okay, so until it's no longer valid or no longer available, it's essentially your transcripts and PCAT scores that are evaluated. And the committee makes initial selections and they reach out to me to confirm that the student has financial need, meets the financial need criteria, and are Texas residents. And then the recipients are, excuse me, notified if they're selected.
Okay, and is that the same process for the Stanley Scholarship?
For the Stanley Rhinehouse Scholarship, it's actually, excuse me, it's actually an application that I do distribute, typically in the month of September. So I send that application to the incoming class, and students reply and send that back to me. And then selections are made by the scholarship committee. So anytime there's an application, I'll make it available to students. But for the Dean's Excellence Scholarship, there is no separate application.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then Lola did have an additional suggestion for external scholarship. So she dropped the website in the chat. So you can go ahead and look at that, but it's scholarshipowl.com. So that's another resource if you want to start before you have your UH account.
Yeah, and I wanted to make mention of one other or a couple other quick items. One tip that I have also prior to arriving in as a Pharm.D student is make sure that you protect your credit rating. Your credit score is very important. as a Pharm.D student, there may be occasions where you do need a private student loan, and those are credit based. So if you do need a private student loan, you want to be in a position where you're able to get approved credit wise, not have to necessarily rely on the parent to be the primary borrower or the co-signer. So definitely do your best to keep your credit score as high as possible. The best way to do that is to have a revolving account like a credit card that you pay on time each time. And that consistent repayment over time is a very positive aspect of your credit score. And once you're a Pharm.D student, I have a new presentation about financial literacy that I'll be sharing with new students later this year and each year. So I think that'll be very valuable as well. And I just wanted to mention to those of you that have joined us today, if you want to visit in person in the Welcome Center, I also see undergraduate students, particularly around the fall or spring starts, when our volume is much heavier than other times. But certainly also because you have interest in the pharmacy program and you joined us today, feel free to reach out to me by email, phone, or in person. And even before you're a Pharm.D student, I'll be happy to work with you on any follow-up questions and financial aid that you have. I'll be very happy to do that. I really want to thank Jessica for inviting me today. And I hope this was helpful to you guys. And I certainly look forward to working with you in the Pharm.D program.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. And I'll go ahead and drop your contact info, your email address, so they can reach out to you if they do have any additional questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, we do have one more question.
Sure.
How's financial need defined or evaluated?
Financial need is essentially the information that you include on the FAFSA will provide the expected family contribution number. So you may be familiar on the undergraduate level with that EFC number that's generated through the FAFSA. Now, on the undergraduate level, your EFC number may have been higher because you were typically, for most students, including parent income and assets. So that tends to drive that EFC number higher. For Pharm.D students, you're reporting only your own income and assets as a student. And while you may work part-time or even full-time as an undergraduate student, that doesn't tend to increase the EFC number very high. So financial need, most Pharm.D students do have financial need, which is the cost of attendance budget number minus the EFC, and then the resulting number is the financial need number. So essentially, out of each Pharm.D class, the only students that really fail to show financial need are frankly those that are married to a spouse who has a high income. And so on the FAFSA, that high income would be reported for a married student. And really those are the only students that do not have financial need as far as need-based scholarships like the Dean's Excellence. But I would say probably 98% of each class has financial need.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker. And then I have a couple of items to add, a bit unrelated to our webinar, but since we're nearing the end, we do have an interview preparation session webinar coming up next week. So if anybody's applying for this term and you have an upcoming interview, or if you're applying for the future but you want to prepare, you are more than welcome to register for that. We'll go over what interview day looks like. And then also, if you missed our last webinar where we went over the requirements and you want me to look at your application or your transcript, you're more than welcome to also set up an advising appointment. I dropped the links on there. Let's see. We don't have any more questions. Again, thank you, Mr. Parker, and thank you, Lola. That information was very helpful, not only I'm sure to the students, but also to myself. So I really appreciate you taking time off today. Anything else you guys want to add?
I think that'll be all from my perspective. I appreciate you inviting me. And again, you guys reach out and let me know if I can help you. Thanks very much.